China-US apparently had intense debates on each other's policies in the first high-level in-person summit in Alaska. While the US is criticizing China for breaching protocols, the focus is still that they think China has no intention to change its ways, without recognizing how US itself has been handling issues with China, interfering with China's own domestic affairs, and whether it will have its own intention to comply with international rules and make a change. While China's delegation showed its sincerity and arrived in Alaska to renew the dialogue mechanism, which has existed for many years during the Obama administration and facilitated as a productive conduit to promote bilateral communications, the US viewed it more or less as a one-off event. Just on the evening of the talks, the US issued a series of actions directed at China, including subpoenas to multiple Chinese information technology companies over national security concerns, and sanctions on 24 Chinese officials involved in the implementation of stringent security laws in Hong Kong. While US Secretary of State Antony Blinken made blunt remarks in the opening, we will discuss our deep concerns with actions by China, including in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, Taiwan, cyber attacks on the United States, economic coercion of our allies. China's top diplomat Yang Jiechi responded in a 15-minute speech that the United States is using its military power and financial supremacy to exert pressure on countries and abusing national security to threaten the future of international trade. US has no right to talk to China from a position of strength, he added. From monetary fiscal policy to governance, the US has much more on its own plate to clean up before trying to act superior to other countries in the world. As the most important economic entity globally, it has failed to act responsibly on global trade, its own domestic human rights issue, and even climate change. Its recent irresponsible money printing not only adds huge fiscal deficit to itself, but exporting inflation globally. Most likely it is China, the second largest global economic entity, that will have to pay the price for such irrational behavior. The current US fiscal debt is about 30 trillion US dollars. With its GDP numbering around 21 trillion US dollars, such a debt ratio is more or less the same as Greece in 2010, when the nation went bankrupt. While we are not saying that this time US government will default necessarily, it did once breach the international treaty that gold price was fixed at 35 US dollars per ounce. In 1971, US abandoned gold standard unilaterally. Gold price soared to 180 US dollars per ounce at the end of year 1974. If the US government keeps printing money to defer its hidden crisis with increasing fiscal deficit, the result will be obvious. Either the US government will go bankrupt or the world gives up on US currency as an anchor. On the contrary, China's central bank is the only global major central bank that kept shrinking its balance sheet since 2009. From this perspective, China has a lot more credit globally than the US. Last year, the Chinese government has demonstrated to the whole world that its governance is efficient and transparent during the control of the pandemic, while the US government's failure to act in a crisis is an obvious comparison. As China's State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi mentioned in the opening remark of today's summit, we came to Anchorage, which is in the middle of the air route between the two countries, by the invitation from the US side, in hopes to bring China-US relationship back on track. During the past few years, the bilateral relationship has been severely damaged by unjustified accusations from the US towards China. China will not tolerate such accusations any further, and we urge its habitual hegemonic interference in domestic